It was supposed to be a routine drive. I had done this route a dozen times before, heading back home after visiting my parents in the countryside. The highway was long and mostly deserted at this hour, just past midnight, with nothing but the distant hum of my tires on the asphalt and the occasional flash of passing signs to keep me company. The first sign that something was wrong came when I noticed the gas gauge dipping lower than expected. I was sure I had filled up before leaving, but now the needle was hovering dangerously close to empty. I brushed it off, figuring maybe I misjudged, and started keeping an eye out for a gas station. That's when I saw the headlights. They appeared in my rearview mirror out of nowhere, two bright, piercing beams cutting through the dark. The car was far behind me initially, but it was gaining fast. It was right on my tail within moments, its high beams glaring into my car. I slowed down a little, hoping they'd pass, but they just stayed there, practically glued to my bumper. "Asshole," I muttered, my frustration growing. I tapped the brakes lightly, hoping to signal them to back off. But instead of easing up, the driver flashed their high beams at me, a blinding burst of light that made me squint and curse. I was getting nervous. This stretch of highway was isolated, with no exits for miles, and I hadn't seen another car in what felt like forever. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, an infinite ribbon of black. I sped up, trying to distance myself from the maniac behind me, but they matched my speed effortlessly, keeping the same menacing distance. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 1:03 a.m. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I realized something. I had been driving for hours, yet the time barely moved. And the gas, it hadn't run out. The gauge was still low, but it wasn't empty. I should have broken it down by now. Panic started to creep in. I looked for landmarks, anything familiar, but everything around me looked the same. Dark trees, the occasional mile marker that seemed to repeat. I was stuck on a loop, trapped in some endless highway, with the only constant being the blinding headlights behind me. I tried the radio, desperate for some sign of normalcy, but all I got was static. Even my phone had no signal, as if the world outside my car had ceased to exist. Then, without warning, the car behind me swerved to the side and shot past. My heart lurched as I caught a glimpse of it, an old battered sedan, its windows pitch black. But it wasn't just the car that chilled me to the bone, it was the driver. I only saw them for a split second, but it was enough. A face, pale and gaunt, with eyes that were nothing but dark pits. They stared straight ahead, unblinking, unseeing. And then the car was gone, speeding off into the night, leaving me alone again. I was shaking now, my mind racing. What the hell was going on? Where was I? I pushed the gas pedal harder, desperate to outrun whatever nightmare I had fallen into. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time had lost all meaning. My eyelids grew heavy, and the road ahead started to blur. I was on the verge of exhaustion, my body screaming for rest, but I couldn't stop. I knew deep down that if I stopped, I'd never get out. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go on any longer, I saw a gas station up ahead, illuminated by flickering neon lights. It looked old and run down, but it was something, a sign that I was finally getting somewhere. I pulled in, my tires crunching on the gravel, and parked by the lone pump. The station was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint buzzing of the lights. I got out, my legs trembling, and started to fill up the tank, glancing around nervously. That's when I noticed the car, the same old battered sedan from before, parked on the other side of the station, my breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen or heard it pull in, it was just there. I debated whether just to leave, but I needed the gas. As I finished pumping, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. The driver. They were standing by their car, facing away from me, still as a statue. Something told me not to engage, not to acknowledge them. I quickly finished, returned to my car, and started the engine. Pulling away, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The driver was gone. In their place was something far worse. A tall and shadowy figure with eyes that glowed a sickly yellow. It stood by the sedan watching me, its head tilting ever so slightly as I sped off into the night. I didn't stop again until I was safely home, my house never looking so comforting. But even now, as I sit here writing this, I can't shake the feeling that I never really left that highway. that maybe, just maybe, the road will come for me again. The unease never left me after that night. I tried to move on, but every time I drove, I felt watched. The nights were the worst, filled with dreams of that endless highway, my car chasing me with a shadowy figure behind the wheel. One night, desperate for answers, I hit the road again. I thought putting distance between me and the highway might help, but as I drove, the surroundings became unsettlingly familiar. The twisted trees, the darkening sky. The clock on my dashboard read 1:03 a.m. Panic set in as I realized I was back on the same highway. My car slowed, almost like it was being pulled toward a familiar destination. And then I saw the gas station, just as decrepit as before, standing alone in the darkness. Against my better judgment, I pulled in, and the car died the moment I stopped. I filled the tank with shaking hands, but then I heard a faint, desperate whisper from inside the station. Help. Me. Something compelled me to investigate. Inside, the station was abandoned, dusty, and cold. The voice led me to a small, dark room in the back. When I opened the door, I saw a figure huddled on the floor, whispering. They turned to face me as I approached, and I froze in horror. It was me, with hollow, dark eyes, and a twisted smile. "You can't escape," it whispered. "You never left." The door slammed shut, plunging the room into darkness. The last thing I saw was its glowing yellow eyes, and everything went black. The highway had me, and this time I knew there was no escaping.